Yeah, I think the biggest misunderstanding is an understanding of the scope of what we have in our hands, right? I think that there is a large portion of the industry that still thinks about AI is the chatbot, right? The ask a question, get an answer. That's through nobody's fault of their own. It's how most of us were introduced. ChatGPT obviously came out and did its thing and was what it was, and that was a chat interface, conversational AI, and that's what we know as AI, right? But we've gone so far beyond that, and I think doing the work to go backward and build more of a foundation of what we can do with AI will help us expand our understanding and scope of what AI is, well beyond this idea of conversational AI.
Welcome to another episode of the Intelligence Fabric, a podcast about where intelligence shows up in multifamily. My name is Mike Brewer, and today's guest is Jacob Carter, founder of NurtureBoss and the author of a new book, AI in Property Management. Well-timed, Jacob. Jacob has spent his career building software for the multifamily industry, and he runs NurtureBoss as an AI-first company from the inside out. And he breaks down what automation, conversational AI, generative AI, and agentic AI actually mean for the operators on the ground. Jacob's take is simple. AI isn't shrinking our jobs, it's shifting them. And those operators, those property management companies out there in the multifamily space who get ahead of this shift that is happening right now will actually have an advantage on a go forward. So with that being said, please welcome Jacob Carter. Jacob, welcome to the show.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, I am also very excited. I think, so you wrote a book recently, and anytime somebody writes a book, especially somebody in our industry and that I know, at least know somewhat, I get deeply interested in reading. So it fits something I love to do. You wrote a book. It's about a timely topic. And so I'm interested to dig into the author's perspective or get commentary on the book that you wrote. Tell me, first and foremost, inspiration. Where did it come from?
Yeah, well, the entire idea to do this project came from Ashley McGovern. And, I'm going to do a really bad job selling myself here, but everything in me did not want to do this, right? Like I feel really uncomfortable and awkward about it. This is, even talking about it candidly is a little bit strange for me. Not to do such a great job selling myself here, but like, who am I to do this project? And it's been a weird, like, emotional journey for me to figure all that out. But so I kind of came along kicking and screaming, but I really enjoyed it once I got into it. And I love talking about this topic. But really the inspiration didn't come from me. It came from somebody else who got me excited about it. And then I got a lot more excited as I went through the project.
Got it. Well, we'll applaud Ashley for being the catalyst for this inspiration. Look, for whatever it's worth, my gut tells me you have every right to write a book like this because I think there's a difference between somebody that sort of writes high level sort of theory or kind of conception. You have been a guy that's been in the trenches you open the story by telling your story about creating software for the industry. And so that being said, the repetition, the being in it, the doing it, to me gives you the merit for writing the book. So I think it's fantastic.
Well, I appreciate it. I'll take it. I'll take it.
Yeah. So title of the book is AI in Property Management. I know this is going to resonate with our audience, both our listeners and our viewers. I want to start by just kind of keeping it above the kind of the tool level, if you will. And when you look at property management today, look, AI it's a little bit of a loaded term. It's a little bit buzzy. How do you see it actually solving problems in property management? Not just hey, we got AI in the name, but how is it actually solving problems in multifamily?
Yeah, I think that the litmus test of solving problems, leveraging AI, whether it be multifamily, internally in your own, company, wherever your implementation is, always comes down to driving outcomes, right? And shiny things are easy to get distracted by, to want to play with, roll out, implement. But at the end of the day, if it's not driving a critical workflow that results in a measurable outcome, then what's the point, right? What are we doing here? Why are we investing time and money into this? So I think there are a lot of ways that AI is being implemented well and successfully in multifamily, and all of those ways are directly tied to driving an outcome. And those outcomes are vast across the leasing lifecycle, the resident lifecycle, asset management. Happy to get in the weeds on it, but that's kind of the way that I look at it providing value.
So obviously you see the landscape of multifamily from a supplier partner's perspective. You see you named some of them, but they're all different kinds of genres in multifamily. What is the most pronounced genre today, be it the life cycle of the resident or the life cycle of the leaser or whatever? Where is it most pronounced in terms of outcomes? In other words, where is AI producing the best outcomes from your perspective?
Yeah, good question. I think that for now, the answer is still in the leasing lifecycle, and that's voice AI answering phones, email, text, chatbot, plus data insights and other sorts of kind of not user-facing AI implementation you might see. And I don't think that necessarily that's because there's the most opportunity there or because it can have the most impact there. I think it's because it's been being built for that area of the lifecycle the longest, right? So I think currently it is. A byproduct of the investment of time, money, and resources into that area of the life cycle. I think that as time goes on, we'll see that change and it'll start to manifest in other areas more in a more pronounced way.
That makes sense. That leasing life cycle is the most mature as it relates to this technology going against it. I so this is a little off track, but I'm curious, your organization is in my head AI driven or AI forward. Is that right? Like I'm not talking about the product that you put out into the marketplace. I'm talking about your company's workflows. Are they all built on AI or AI first?
Yeah, Yeah, so we try to not only to kind of eat your own dog food sort of
Yeah.
mentality,
Yeah.
but also just practice what we preach and stay at the forefront in education and implementation. Everything we do really is done from a lens of AI first. That means internal workflows and processes. That means product development, obviously, marketing, collateral, digital development on the visual side of things, and then of course obviously into our actual product and interaction with our customers and their customers as well. But I do think that we do a great job embodying from start to finish an AI first mentality.
I think that's really important and lends a lot of street cred to your efforts in the terms of the product that you're selling into the marketplace because not are you just trying to sell something, but you're also utilizing the very thing that you're trying to sell. Obviously, workflows are a little different internally than they are external. Okay, so in the book, maybe I want to sort of parse various definitions of various terms out there to sort of create context for the remainder of our conversation. So you separate automation, conversational AI, generative AI, agentic AI, and I'm sure there's like 15 other AI terms that we could talk about. But those are the ones that I highlighted and underlined. So if I'm an operator, I spent 30 years on the operations side. All these things are flying 100 miles an hour by 100 different supplier partners. I'm exaggerating for effect, but I get tired of buzzwords. What's the cleanest way to understand these different terms?
Yeah, I it's that's a good question. I get tired of buzzwords too, for what it's worth, especially when they start to diverge and mean different things to different people, and you have to switch depending on who you're talking to. So I share in the overwhelm nature of that. But I think the best way to think about it is in a tiered structure, or I don't know, think of any version of a pyramid type or org chart type shape, right? Where you have these big broad terms, machine learning, artificial intelligence, right? And these kind of global scoped words to talk about an entire school of computer science, and I'll stop so I don't get too nerdy on that there. But I think high level is good, and then you can start to narrow down, right? And you have your generative AI, which is your large language models, and usually for 99.9% of everybody, that's all that you're going to care about or need to know about. But obviously there's sister and brother kind of implementations of AI that fit on that tier of our pyramid. And then as you go down, you start thinking about um, actually driving outcomes, like we talked about early, actual implementation of this technology. And that's when you get into things like agentic, conversational, right? And this is kind of like our lowest tier and most specific and granular. So I think that rather than trying to understand everything, it's helpful to at least understand that when we say these things, we're typically walking our way down a step ladder of specificity.
That makes sense. Something comes to mind as you're sort of walking through that. A couple of years ago, or maybe it was last summer at Blueprint, um, I led a panel where we were talking about agent to agent. So you have an agent that goes out into the marketplace and interacts with said human, but now said human can have proxy called digital Mike or digital Jacob that can actually do commerce with enterprise digital person, right? Or thing. Are we there, or how close are we to that moment in time? And obviously, there's got to be adoption on this side, the proxy side of the human, but how close are we to that moment in time where you could have an agent lease an apartment via an agent?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think no is my short answer. Let me burst the bubble. But I think that the reason it's no is because of that proxy side, like you alluded to. I think that getting general intelligence across mass population and more importantly, comfort with having something like an AI agent that represents you out in the world is not there yet. I think it hasn't been productized in a way that's easy for people to roll out, implement, and understand without having this deep knowledge of that step ladder structure we were just talking about. I don't think though, if you look at the other side of it, the business side, if you will, not the proxy side, that's there already. If an agent can
Sure.
interact with a human, why can't it interact with an agent, right? I don't think there's more work to be done in order to make that possible. Broadly speaking, but I do think we are quite far away on the proxy agent side, and I think it's mostly around comfortability, uh, uh, product availability, and education on kind of the other side of that marketplace you're describing.
That makes total sense to me. So staying in the human sort of area, I uh, okay. Let me just ask the question, and then I have an opinion about this that I'd like to share into your answer. Let's get your
Okay.
take on it. So I want to spend time talking about human in the loop. And my direct question for you is, where does the human need to stay in the loop, and where should the human not be? It's funny that we talk about humans the way we do, but where should they stay away from it, and where should they be in the loop? And then I have a thought here I'd like to share after you answer.
Yeah. Yeah, so I think that, I have this whole spiel I've been given lately to anyone who listens, and I won't give it to you here because I know we're short on time. But the title of the spiel is the new on-site team, right? And it's really all about focusing on what is that area that humans should not only be in the loop but own, master, and completely control. And I think that stuff is going around that human relationship aspect. And that's not a novel statement I just made, right? Everybody's saying that, but happy to explain more what I mean by it. But the rote task work that needs to get done, that's where AI really thrives and driving outcomes from that. The reality of the on-site team is every day when you come in, you have a checklist of the things you must get done before 5 o'clock, right? And 9:01 hits on the clock, and the resident walks in with a complaint about their neighbor. A prospect from off the street wants a tour, right? And life happens. And you get to the end of the day, and that checklist isn't even close to done yet. Well, that's what AI does. It does that checklist for us so that you can keep doing the stuff, play jazz, if you will, with the schedule of the day, so that you can manage that kind of human in the loop aspect of it.
So let's sort of switch I don't want to call it a definition because that's not what it is, but sort of switch up a little bit and say that human in the loop uh, in an AI workflow, or maybe we call this automation. You can tell me the definitions here, but if there's a human involved in a decision making process where said AI does workflow to a certain point, then it says, "Hey, human, you need to do this next thing." Then we can keep the workflow going. I kind of let's think about human in the loop in that respect. The point I want to make here is I think humans are innately lazy, right? Somebody that develops software like yours, you scratch your own itch in part because, hey man, I'm tired of working on this thing, so let me get automation, right? Because innately I'm a little bit lazy. Okay, so if a human is in the loop, they're innately a little bit lazy. They start to pencil whip work, right?
Yeah.
So people who are arguing for human in the loop or keeping human in the loop, aside from the relationship thing, I get that. Do you think that we contend with that, or just tell me what you think about that as an idea? Humans are going to mess it up anyway if you let them stay too far in them.
Yeah. So I'll rephrase and say humans are have a tendency toward efficiency is how I'll word it instead
Ah,
of
I like it.
laziness.
I like it.
But
I like it.
I think that we always look for the path of least resistance,
Yeah,
whether consciously or not. But yeah, listen, I think that the human in the loop, as you describe it, will if you have a spectrum and AIs over here, and then you have human in the loop over here on the right, that is going to start to shift. Where you go from human in the loop, it is half the work to now it's 40%, then 30, then 20, then 10, and I think we're going to see AI
yeah,
get better and better at complex tasks, and human in the loop, as you describe it, will dwindle and dwindle until ultimately we truly live in that world that I'm describing, where it's focused on the relationship.
yeah. I That sounds absolutely right to me. I think it's the day you get to the point where humans are just doing eye to eye, uh, in real life type conversation, that's going to have a very high yield on it, especially if you're not distracted by all this stuff that you can sort of reduce over a long bit of time. So
Yeah, yeah. And and here actually let me fix my camera really quick. I don't know why it's got me blurry here. But the thing that I'll add to that is, human focused on the day-to-day thing. I think where it's shifting is on-site teams are truly going to be able to become ambassadors for the community. So what I mean by that is that not only do you deeply understand every floor plan, you know which floor plans and which units specifically get light in the morning versus light at night, right? You know where residents go to get coffee, the local spot that everyone likes to go to. Like, this is the kind of information that makes it where you truly can create a one of a kind experience for somebody who's considering renting at your community. But you don't have the time right now to become that ambassador or that expert like I'm describing. And I think as human in the loop becomes less and less of a time sink, you have more and more time to become this true community ambassador. And that's what the on-site team of the future looks like, is experts in the neighborhood, experts in the floor plans, things like that.
I love that. That is just said very well, and I totally agree with it. So, okay, let's move on to a different thing. So, I imagine you've seen this probably from a more intimate position than most, or maybe supply partners who work on software all the time see it too. But guys like me who spend operations or spent all their time in operations have not seen this. But we have so much data that is being collected by whatever IoT. It's being collected by everything we've been doing over the last 20 years in social media, like feeding all of our personal information into. So we got all this stuff. Let's say 10 years ago, we started to think about business intelligence and dashboards and measuring every single thing that we could possibly measure. But I think what's evolved over the last 10 years is you have all these disparate systems that rely on these connections and pay to play and all this other kind of stuff just to get the data to talk to each other. And even then it's messy. How do you see that evolving over the next, say, 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 years where data starts to play well together? It's clean, it's usable. When you surface it, we can actually make decisions.
Yeah, I think my gut tells me that my opinion about this maybe breaks from the norm or what the data experts would say, but maybe it doesn't. You tell me what you think. But I think that this old school thinking of a source of truth for data is not taking into consideration the new world that we live in. So having a data lake somewhere where everything pipes into, and then you have one area where you can pull data out of for your reporting, for your analytics, and various BI tools that you use, that was the obvious and right solution before the world of AI. Now that we're in the world that we're in, why do we need to um, encumber ourselves with that headache or that bottleneck of trying to figure out how to accomplish that, right? In the world of multifamily, you have a lot of legacy technology, you have a lot of new technology. they share and pass data around in very different ways that looks very different. The act of trying to normalize that in a single source is wildly labor intensive, and we have AI, right? So I think instead we should be focused more on building the orchestration layer. Don't worry about the data, where it lives, what it looks like. The orchestration layer, as I describe its job, is to do that normalization, to do that consolidation. Because you, as the user, don't care about where the data is or what it looks like. You care about getting the answer to your question and knowing that it's accurate, right? So I think the world of AI has brought us to a place where we don't need to worry about where our data lives and what it looks like. And I don't mean from a security standpoint, right? And I don't mean those obvious things, but we're going to be able to leverage AI to build the perfect context model for ourselves to get the right answers to the questions that we need. And I think over the next, I hate making a prediction more than 12 months long in this world today. So over the next 12 months, uh, context is king is going to be the phrase that we start putting a lot of time and energy into.
We're going to call you back 12 days from now to talk about how that's come to fruition. it's,
Yeah.
it's crazy how fast it's all
Yeah.
changing.
It's wildly fast.
Yeah,
Yeah.
oh gosh, I mean, if you go to sleep over the weekend, you're not paying attention to your feed. It's like, oh wow, the world changed in 48 hours.
Yeah.
It's kind of crazy.
It's nuts.
Um, yeah, I couldn't agree. I couldn't agree with you more. It's almost like so I used to believe that you needed to capture all the data before it went into one of those legacy systems. We'll leave the names out of because you wanted to control it, right? And you didn't want to pay or have your supplier partner pay to have that data harvested out and put into usable form. That's the argument that I always had against this, and or in favor of data lakes or however we might describe that. But today, to your point, if you just lay something that's intelligence over the top of that orchestration layer or otherwise, you can start to bring that data together and surface it in a way that is informative and actionable, and probably the predicate for predictive kind of work. Is that a fair way to frame that?
Yeah, I think so. I think that it is the predicate for everything, and I think that a lot of us are doing this work already, right? And creating this context repository, if you will, that has that information needed in order to build highly effective AI tooling, products, features, platforms, right? On top of that scope or context that we're curating through the help of AI using disparate data sources, right?
Yeah, it. I agree with that, and I think who knows, guys like me have been around. This is like my 30th year in this industry, and starting to see the horizon, or maybe even called a little bit around the bend, coming our way is truly exciting and fascinating. And guys like you who are on the cutting edge of that, or even dare I say bleeding edge of that, I'm fascinated by what you and others will create. It's going to be fun to watch.
Well, it's fun to build, so I'm excited to watch what everyone else does as well.
um, okay, so obviously a lot of noise out there in the marketplace right now, multifamily specifically, because that's what we're talking about. What do you think a lot of people, I'm careful to not make blanket statements, but there are a lot of people in our industry. I remember this when social media came to be a thing. I would sit on roundtables or in the audience watching panels, and they would talk about social media and be completely misplaced in their remarks. I imagine there's a lot of that going on with AI right now. What do you think is the biggest thing that's being misunderstood right now that probably needs correction?
Yeah, I think the biggest misunderstanding is an understanding of the scope of what we have in our hands, right? I think that there is a large portion of the industry that still thinks about AI is the chatbot, right? The
Yeah,
ask a question, get an answer.
so true.
And that's through nobody's fault of their own. It's how most of us were introduced. ChatGPT obviously came out and did its thing and was what it was, and that was a chat interface, conversational AI, and that's what we know as AI, right? But we've gone so far beyond that, and I think doing the work to go backward and build more of a foundation of what we can do with AI will help us expand our understanding and scope of what AI is well beyond this idea of conversational AI, because I think that that's really where most of us start and stop when it comes to understanding what it is.
Yeah, so true. Write me a good email. That's kind of what a lot of the
Yeah.
use is right now, or clean up this email that I just wrote. Um,
Yeah.
let's say, let's shift gears a little bit. If you were advising an owner and an operator, I mean, you talk to owners and operators, I imagine, on a daily basis, or even regional
Yeah,
managers,
of
people
course.
who are your customer. Those people who want to get smarter about this noisy landscape, and they want to avoid all the hype, like who? Obviously, you wrote a book about this, and I highly encourage everybody to read this book. Jacob was kind enough to send me a manuscript, and I promised to buy a copy because I want to support authors. But anyway, send me this. Definitely, this is a resource. But Jacob, from your perspective, I imagine you're reading about AI, whether it be called blog posts, articles, books, things of that nature. Where would you point people to learn more aside from your book, which again, I will say buy?
Yeah. Well, I appreciate that. I don't have a source that I get my information from. I would say the first thing everybody should do is find somebody smarter than you and talk to them all the time, right? That's what I really prioritize in my life is people that are more knowledgeable than I am and having as many conversations with them as humanly possible. There's also obvious and good resources. Anthropic and OpenAI are at the forefront of generative AI, which is what we're all using today. And they put out a ton of content, blog articles, things of that nature. And I would encourage everyone to use it. I have a few podcasts I like to listen to. Practical AI is one of them. These are a little more in the weeds, but it's good to know, what people, Fortune 500, size businesses are doing and working on so that you can stay in the loop there as well. Also, don't discredit, your short form video, your YouTube shorts, your TikToks. These are really good resources as well that I encourage you to find ones that you like. And, when you're sitting there looking for something to do, give it a quick scroll and get caught up on some stuff there too.
That makes sense. Speaking of human resources, I'm going to call it human resources. You invited a lot of people. I called it 25 before we hit the record button, but I don't know if it's actually 25. But you invited a lot of people, basically the who's who's list of multifamily. What inspired you to do that? And feel free to shout out anybody you invited in without. I know you run the risk of leaving people out, but uh, what did you find most? What inspired you? What did you find most insightful with the group of people that you pulled together?
Yeah. Well, the for the reason of why did we do that? The same reason that we hosted the AI Unplugged webinar that we had, where we brought in a bunch of competitors from the space to talk about the same topic, is that we all benefit, suppliers, vendors, operators, owners. We all benefit from sharing knowledge, right? It's so important and critical, I think, that we participate in getting as much out there as fast as we can, because a rising tide lifts all ships, right? And I'm a big promoter of influencing that rising tide. One of the uh, this is a little bit of a tangent, so I'll try to keep this super short. But
No worries.
an example that I love is when the printing press was created, the elites of the society thought that it would create a rebellion, right, of the low people as they defined it of the age, right? And that it would create this world where they lost their powers, right? But what it did was it created the democratization of knowledge and the advances in society that we saw from the printing press, right, were unmeasurable. And that's the world that we're in now, right? With the AI coming out in the different versions and flavors of it, is that we are really going to see massive growth across everybody in the world. And I think that we should all contribute to that knowledge as much as possible. So that was a little long winded there, and I apologize,
No
but
worries.
it's to me, it's crazy to not invite anybody and everybody to this conversation to get as much voices and opinions, thoughts, ideas out there as humanly possible.
Yeah, definitely. I couldn't agree with you more. It's like let's grow the pie bigger, not try to find the biggest slice and get that for ourselves. And I'm also a big believer in the more minds you bring together, it sort of yields this third mind, and you create even bigger and better ideas because nobody has a monopoly on the best ideas in the world. So
No.
it's
Yeah.
generally when humans come together. Um, okay, so I've got two more questions. The first one is I was so impressed by I think it was I can't remember what chapter this is, but you, it's kind of what is the future of AI in multifamily? And your opening line is honestly, I don't know. And so I talk about that. I mean, I'm sort of teeing up for you to just kind of opine on the future of AI. I think you're right. Who knows? It changes every 15 minutes. But if you were to
Yeah.
sort of look at the crystal ball, what would you say?
Yeah, it's honestly, I don't know. Right?
I love
That's
it.
what I
I
wrote in the
love it.
book, and that's my answer right now. So I think that anything I say is such a guess, but it's a fun thing to do, and I'm happy to do it. But I just want to be super clear that I really don't know. I think that the next big thing we're all waiting for is AGI, artificial general intelligence. Right? We are in the generative AI world, and there are really clear limitations around what can be done and can't be done there. And AGI totally breaks through that. And I think once that's created, that's when you start doing things like finding the cure for cancer, right? That's when those big predictions that I mentioned elsewhere in the book start to come to fruition. So it's really hard to say, but if we're going to go just to generative AI, large language models as we know today, I think it goes back to what you were asking me earlier, Mike, which is around that orchestration of the data layer, right? And understanding how do we build great and robust context that we can operate on top of. And I think that's the immediate advances we're going to see is people understanding better how to build that context so that we truly can accomplish tasks and outcomes that would have seemed impossible otherwise without that human in the loop that we referenced earlier as well.
I love that. Yeah. I love your honesty and I literally laughed out loud when I read that because, I shouldn't say most, that's a blanket statement, but a lot of people would have just gone right into a prediction, right? You just were vulnerable in saying, come on, heck, I don't know. It's
Yeah,
fantastic.
it's so hard to know what's next in the world that we're living in, but it's fun to be living in it.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Okay, I've one last question for you. You obviously this book is 100 plus pages long. We've spent 30 minutes plus or minus trying to unpack a little bit of it. Obviously, there are some questions that I didn't ask you that might be valuable for our audience and our viewers. What did I not talk about or ask that you think is valuable?
Yeah, I think that I would actually choose, since you're kind of left this wide open for me, I would choose to reiterate two things that we talked about that I think are super important. One of them is do everything you can to learn as much as you can, and that doesn't mean become an expert in neural networks and transformer architecture and back propagation. Right? That doesn't mean that at all. What that means is play with it, right? Download Claude, ChatGPT, start talking with it. Anytime you have a question or you're stuck or you need help, turn to AI, see what the outcome is. This exposure is the best way to level up your knowledge and to get better. So expose yourself to as much as humanly possible, as fast as you can. Nothing but knowledge will come from that. The other piece that I would really reiterate is that we need to start working, or excuse me, we need to start thinking about what the new world for us, on-site teams, regionals, marketing managers, CEOs of tech companies, right? It doesn't matter what your title is. What does the new world look like in an AI forward work environment, right? We need to get ahead of defining what the human role is and starting to coach, teach, and train our employees how to be in that role. AI doesn't mean that our jobs are going away, right? It's not shrinking, it's shifting, is the way that I like to talk about it. Our roles are shifting. So get ahead of that shift, right? Start planning today what your employees' roles look like 3, 6, 12 months from now so that we can continue to take advantage of this great technology while keeping our people focused on what only people can do. Let's not get caught flat footed with this.
Great point. It's a great point. It's evolving so very fast. And it's, look, the traditional business hierarchy that's governed our businesses for a long bit of time is at risk of being completely disrupted. And to your point, we need to architect that and do it thoughtfully because you've got all these people who've been in this industry for a very long bit of time, people that are coming into it brand new. It needs to feel comfortable because at the end of the day, we're serving humans.
Yeah, absolutely. And we have the opportunity to control our destiny here, take the reins. So the only reason that that won't happen is because we dropped the ball on it. And I literally mean all of us in the professional world. So I think that that's something we should pay attention to.
Well, Jacob, congratulations on the book. I firsthand know how difficult it is to write a book. So I applaud you for that effort. The book is wonderful, and I would endorse it again. I'm definitely going to do my Amazon review after I buy it, so I'm a certified buyer. Uh, but
Thank you
where
for that.
can yeah, no, you're definitely welcome. Uh, where can people learn more? Certainly find the book, and or if they want to reach out to you directly.
Yeah, so Amazon, Kindle, or hard copy is available on Amazon. LinkedIn is definitely the place to go. I am a huge believer of constantly trying to share my thoughts and knowledge as much as humanly possible. So on LinkedIn, you'll find me talking about this stuff. You'll find tons of different white papers and things that I write. They're always free. There's never a secret goal to give me your email address, direct link to PDFs, right? Like I just want to get it out there and share with as much as humanly possible. So LinkedIn is definitely the place to go to hear more about what I think about things and trying to share that knowledge as much as possible.
Excellent. Well, we will link that up in the show notes, all of that stuff. Anything else we can find linkable in the episode from today, and we'll put that in the show notes. But Jacob, I really appreciate you investing a little bit of time with me here today, and definitely again for giving me the book. That was really gracious of you. So thanks again.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It was fun.
All right. Talk soon.
Yeah, bye.